All you need is one of these. Machine pistol. Self-repeating. Takes 7.63 caliber rounds in the shot box magazine.
You saw the name of the video, and the short answer is yes, you can beat Bioshock Infinite with just using pistols. But let's go over how I got here. In Bioshock Infinite, there are two pistols I can use for this challenge. The first pistol we get in the beginning of the game is the Broadsider, or this adaptation of the C96 Mauser. A great general use pistol for typical enemies and the main workhorse for half the game. Then there's the Paddywhacker. I had no idea that this is what the hand cannon is called. I just remember everyone, including the NPCs, just referring to it as that. This will be primarily used for dealing with more tankier enemies. It is also great for headshots too. The rules for this playthrough is that I can only use pistols to deal damage to enemies. Any damage coming from other than pistols is an automatic reset. Secondly, I will be playing on the 1990 mode difficulty with the additional challenge of scavenger hunt. That means not buying anything from the dollar bill vending machine. Lastly, we can use plasmids as long as it's not doing damage to enemies or possessing enemies to then do damage to them. We all know the lowdown: girl, lighthouse, cuck chair, Columbia, take a dunk in the river, wake up, eat a hot dog without paying for it, watch the Mormon parade, and make our way to the fair. Pick number 77 and decide to take my coffee black. Now I know what you're thinking. Oddly, that's a skyhook you're using to turn those pigs' heads inside out, and you're right. Once we get this officer's service pistol, we can then get the show on the road. For the early game, target priority is a huge must. Most human NPCs will usually get stuck trying to reposition themselves to try to get the drop on you. This is further exasperated in the 1999 mode. They won't directly charge at you unless they're a bruiser or a melee enemy. Making our way past those pigs, we are greeted with our first fireman. Now normally in regular or hard difficulty, these guys are usually a pushover. In 1999 mode, they still are. However, they become a little bit more annoying when you throw into the mix more ranged enemies and more confined spaces. Overall, I still think they're a little less threatening than the pistol-wielding enemies. Making our way into the bar, I take a drink of the strange drinks from strangers to make me into a Spartan wannabe. Then I take everything that isn't nailed down, only because I own the complete edition of the game, and I can take all these goodies. Dumping all the infusions into shields because there's no way I'm going to be a bullet sponge on this difficulty. Fighting towards Monument Island, broke into the Progressive's house, we'll come back here later, more goons, turrets, and firemen. This time around, the fireman fight was a little bit more difficult because I ran out of ammo, but then he Samsunged over to the horizon himself. This will be an ongoing theme of running around scavenging for ammo before I can re-engage with the fight. After we run into the Cuckoo's Nest, I shoot up the place, get the key for the Progressive's house chest, and I take more shield. Try not to get spotted by the police outside of the house on my way back into the Cuckoo's Nest, fail. Take the fancy elevator to the top, and then we get to watch a zealot enjoy a Chinese succulent meal. Now, zealots are even more bigger pushovers than firemen, because all you have to do is wait for their attack to be telegraphed and then just unload your entire magazine into them. I try not taking the Murderer Crow's vigor initially, only then to be bum rushed by 4 grunts. Moving on outside, we get roasted by moving patrols. I don't know much, which is worse, being French or 4'9". Regardless, we continue moving through towards Monument Island. Killing more cops, civilians, and painters alike. Picked up another fusion, put it into shield. But most importantly, on the way to Monument Island, we pick up a very important piece of gear that will allow us to pick up ammunition 40% of the time off of enemies we killed. Finally, we meet Comstock face to face, get a bloody nose, and then watch a woman burn herself alive. Monument Island in its entirety is one big nothing burger, outside of getting another infusion that we picked up for more shield, get the girl, bird, watch a Vox ship get slammed, and take another dunk in the river. Wake up, get health, lie to women, and we're back on track. Pick the cage, drink another man's booze, break and enter, and get stabbed for demanding better customer service like a Karen, yada yada. Battleship Bay is relatively easy, but now we have to start dealing with shotgun enemies, which take out my shield quickly. They are let alone more dangerous than the firemen and or the zealots put together. After the ambush, Elizabeth escapes, I pick up my final infusion for shields, tried cranking that soldier boy, failed, and now we've come to Soldier's Field. At this point of the game, Elizabeth starts having the ability to lockpick when she's not in combat. This is great as she's now able to access items, equipment, and more importantly, infusions that would be locked out to me. Now that shields are fully maxed out all the way, I started putting more infusions to health. In retrospect, I should have started putting them into salts, as this would have been better by the end of the game. After walking the pier, we come across the gondola, but it needs shock jockey in order to power the tram. Rushing towards the Hall of Heroes before the NPCs have time to turn hostile for us to fight, we get another vigor we can't use, or rather, because I thought we couldn't use. I couldn't remember if Brucking Bronco does damage to enemies when they fall down, but that would go against the spirit of the challenge. Clearing out the enemies at the base of the museum, I deal with another stupid zealot. Tip of the hat, we get another infusion. And then get the best gear item in the challenge, baby. That isn't Nor'easter or Winter Shield. On a side note, Nor'easter and Winter Shield I did not specifically exclude from the rules, but if I get them, I'm not going to use them. Being invincible whenever you use your skyhook or eating food is great and all, but it kind of ruins the spirit of the challenge, so I'm simply not going to use them. Instead, we get the best pair of pants, being Urgent Care, which halves our read time charge and the rate in which our shield recharges. At the basin of the museum, I have my first encounter with a sniper, and thinking with my brass balls because I have my shields maxed out, I can simply run past the sniper and head to the loading zone inside of the museum. But it takes out a good chunk of my health before I can make it over there. But what makes it worse is during when my shield was recharging, Elizabeth gives me an indication that she was going to throw me ammo. Thinking it was a pistol, she instead throws me a fucking sniper rifle. Now, I could have just kept the sniper rifle in my inventory and simply not used it, but instead, I just reset to the last checkpoint, giving us our first reset in the challenge. Running past the sniper and then dying in the loading zone and making our way in the Hall of Heroes with no health. I had never had a scenario happen like this before while playing Infinite, where you begin dying in the load zone, but transition before it hits you, so I don't know if this counts as me dying, so if you want to throw it to the death count, be my guest. Inside of the museum, it's one ambush after another. Pick up another infusion and dump it into health. Slate wants us to check out the exhibits in the museum, so we begin at the Wounded Knee side. Fighting all of Slate's men in the Wounded Knee area, we then transition over to the Boxer Rebellion side. I then there almost got my shit pushed in with how CQC the fight was. If it weren't for Elizabeth spamming me with a health kit constantly, it didn't also help that there was a fireman there as well. Moving past the small talk in the First Lady exhibit of the museum, we are finally introduced to Elizabeth now being able to use tears in combat. As long as the tears that she brings into don't inflict any damage on enemies in combat, I'm counting it as permittable. So in general, no rocket turrets or any environmental hazards that could ruin this challenge. Picking off all the combatants in the courtyard, we are then introduced to one of the many bullet spongy enemies in the game known as the Rocketeer/Grenadier, and then the Mechanized Patriot. Now the Rocketeer enemy and the Grenadier are both easy to deal with, just as long as you clear out the other enemies first in the area. And then you just headshot them until their helmets come off and then finish them off. However, the Mechanized Patriots are a whole different beast of burden entirely because there's no decoy vigor or anything you can use to distract them. And since we can't use Shock Jockey or Murderer Crows to stun them long enough so that way we can shoot at their exposed gears, we have to come up with an entirely different strategy of running around in circles seeking cover. Another thing about the Motorized Patriots is that they hit like a truck, so playing Ring Around a Rosie with them is a no-go. After the first Patriot fight, we begin to figure out that Slate drank all the fucking lean in the building before giving us a sip. Slate outside goes on a rant about how the VA isn't giving him any of his benefits. Comstock's men show up and we begin another firefight. I then pick up another vigor for health. Finally, we confront Slate for the Shock Jockey vigor. I finished everything on my plate, not because if you spare him, spoiler, he just gets tortured later on, but I just think how it's funny how Elizabeth just stares at you like a deer in headlights. Dealt with another Birdman in the lobby, and make our way outside of the museum before a skirmish between Slate's men and Comstock's soldiers begins. It was nice not being shot at, until all of Slate's men died. I decided from this point forward, if I didn't need to engage with a brawl, then I wouldn't, unless there was something special involved, like this Patriot before the loading zone. Finally making it back to the gondola tram platform, to no one's surprise, we were once again ambushed by Comstock's soldiers. Only this time before we could move on, we had to deal with 4 Rocketeers, or what I believe to be 4 Rocketeers. because while I'm on the skyline, I think that they ended up shooting themselves and just sent themselves down, crating towards the earth. Taking the gondola up to the First Lady airship, we get another infusion for health, and then Elizabeth shows me her favorite wrench. Waking up a third time, flying over Finkton docks, I agree to help aid a terrorist with supplying guns to arm an entire revolution in exchange for the airship. You know how I originally said that I wouldn't engage in combat unless there was something really valuable worth taking and killing over? Well, this was certainly worth it because I received the best gear item being Quick Hand. Basically, it allows you to reload 30% faster, by which no means do any of the handguns reload slowly, which could also be remedied by buying their particular upgrades for each of the handguns. But it's just a general quality of life upgrade. Chasing after Elizabeth, we get another infusion, health, and then we get handled by a handyman. Like the wuss we are, we agree to help Elizabeth get to Paris instead of falling to our death, and arrive in Finkton proper. I decided not getting a job from Finkton, so heading downstairs, there's a bunch of more Comstock goons and a mechanized Patriot that throttle me up a good decent bit. Taking the elevator downstairs, we get shown the wonders of minimum wage, and then are given our final weapon being the hand cannon. This thing is a beast within itself. It is great for headshots and dealing with clusters of enemies that get really close. Finkton proper is mostly a walkathon between the gunsmith Chen Lin and the Good Time Club. However, leaving the gunsmith is our first gunfight with a handyman. Equipping then the handyman nemesis gear gives us a 50% damage boost against them. Pair that with jumping around like a damn cricket, then they aren't really much of a challenge, but definitely not a pushover. A definite A tier threat. Inside the Good Time Club is another wave enemy area. Now having two weapons to switch back and forward from is where the most enjoyment that I found comes during these levels. Still, it is more of the same enemies we've seen so far, firemen, patriots, zealots, turrets, and these weird fucking balloons. It is all nothing that my big iron couldn't handle. Picked up another infusion downstairs in the bar, health again. And now we are in the confinement area of the show house. And on a side note, I might add that it's kind of weird that you want to bring your political prisoners to your own club. Wouldn't that just scare off the best of your customer base? Anyway, we find Chen Lin in a cell who clearly died of COVID. Then the soulless redheads tell us about quantum mechanics, and then we do a space-time jump. Back upstairs, there's more security for us to deal with. However, they don't seem interested in coming backstage, which gives me a safe place to let my shield recharge when it breaks. Exiting, we return back to Shen Lin's shop to see that Unk isn't doing all too well in the head, and now we have to go to the slums to get his equipment back. Arriving in Shantytown, I took a detour and got my final infusion for health at a charity stand, who, afterwards, I did not gun down the owners nor anybody else that tried to pull a gun on me. Played a song for some dumb, starving kid, and then arrived at the police precinct. On another side note, if the LAPD had anywhere near the budget that this precinct has in Infinite, I would assure you that the streets of LA would not look like the clean streets of India. I mean, for crying out loud, they have two anti-defense turrets right outside of their door. Whatever their budget is, however, is still not good enough for the good old strategy of staying out of their sightline and shooting them from a distance. Inside the precinct, the staff and the more deadly Patriot gives me the hardest reach around, worse than several parking tickets. Once inside the evidence locker, we find the tools for the gunsmith, but we aren't built differently to carry them. So instead, Elizabeth opens another tear, in which they were never there in the first place. It would have been nice for her to have done that in the first place, but whatever. Running back and forth, there are actually two infusions inside of the precinct, one behind a locked door, and the other one in the evidence locker, upstairs. However, that one needs a key that's all the way back in the graveyard shift, so that was fun fetching that. Both went into salts now that health and shields are both maxed out. Now that the communist revolution has begun, we take the elevator back up to Finkton proper, get another vigor we can't use, and fight against another pesky sniper. Back at the gunsmith, oh no, they're dead. Anyways, we're now off to go find the terrorist who has our whirlybird after a done deal. Getting there is more of the same. Infantry, rocket turrets, patriots are no big deal, especially with the Vox backing us up now. The only thing that could stand in our way is aboard the Zeppelin itself, the only difficult enemy that there was another Patriot. After destroying the Zeppelin, we hop back down, and now we get a tour of the factory. While in the elevator, we get a call from Fitzroy, who isn't pleased that we're alive. But at the same time, we were no threat to our revolution, so without the Burial at Sea DLC, wanting to kill us seems like a very stupid move. Regardless, I take my final upgrade for the box pistol, and now it is good as it will ever be. After watching Fitzroy murder Finkton, she sends out more soldiers after us, including another handyman. Fun fact, handymen can throw enemies at you instead of their simple electric attack, but what I didn't know about them before this recording is that they can also throw special enemies like a fireman. Speaking of throwing enemies, I got hit by one while riding the skyline and got killed while trying to run to cover. So this marks the second reset this run. This time around, I did better management of all the ranged grunts first, and then letting the handyman do his shock attack on the skyline gives me an opportunity to lay some lead into him. Afterwards, Fitzroy is threatening to kill a kid, and giving Elizabeth a boost, she stabs her like the spy from TF2. Traumatized, she runs into the First Lady airship. I set a course for Finland for some reason. Yeah, punching in North 78 and East 364 gets you that apparently. I don't know, I got a C in geography, so maybe my coordination skills aren't as good as they used to be. Then Big Bird attacks, I look away for a second, and the coordinates go back to north by 12 and east by 706, which is Africa? Totally unplayable. No wonder why Corey in the house for the DS is better than this. Wake up for a fourth time, push a piano, and we're off to Comstock's house through the Market District. This is where the difficulty of the challenge comes in, not because of the enemies, but because we're mostly fighting up against Fox, and they typically do not carry Colombian weapons, so ammo is going to get really scarce. The most important thing to note while in the Market District is that we get the best vigor for this challenge that we can use, being Return to Sender. However, getting it requires you to go to the bookstore and grab a voxophone in order to get into the secret room behind the bar. In which, while in the bookstore basement, I got bum rushed and died, making this the third reset of the run. This vigor paired with urgent care allows me when dealing with big groups of enemies, gives me the opportunity to recharge my shield instead of hiding like a little bitch. In downtown Emporia is where things start to be really heating up between the Vox and the remaining Colombian forces. When fighting, I try to stick towards aiding the Colombian forces only because they have less tankier enemies to deal with. Initially, I had completely forgotten how Return to Sender works and was throwing the traps created by it in places that the NPCs wouldn't accidentally run into. Finally, I got to use the only time in this game where there is a decoy tear, which came in handy when fighting another handyman. Fighting through multiple cohorts, we finally arrive at the gates of Comstock's house. However, he didn't leave us a key under the mat. So we decided to go see if his dead wife had one. Elizabeth wants a souvenir and decides to cut off her mother's hand. Comstock then fucking raises her from the dead and begins one of the parts of the game that I've been dreading about. The siren is a pain in the ass on regular 1999 mode, and is usually people cheese the fight by setting down fireball vigor traps where she spawns. Now, doing the fight with pistols with limited ammo, I thought in the back of my head, this is where I either had to break the rule of not using the dollar bill machines, or skip the next 3 fights. I thought initially because of the side game mode Clashed in the Clouds, you could knock the bodies away from her off the edge, preventing her from spawning more enemies. However, like the archvile she is, if the bodies aren't despawned by knocking them off the map, she can still resurrect them. In which, I was overwhelmed, died, and reset for the 4th time. New plan, when she spawns in, rush her and gun her down with the hand cannon. If her or any of her minions attacked, spam the Return to Sender vigor and pray that I have enough ammo to kill her. And when I didn't have the ammo, I would run around the graveyard hoping to grab whatever ammo I can, just like a Second Amendment enthusiast shopping for ammo in California. Surprisingly, I was able to kill her. Then we got a brief that she's in some sort of manic confusion / purgatory, and we need to split up and look for clues to why she is so pissed. A trip to the photo store, the Mormon lab, and the bank finally tells us that Comstock got worried that she had loose lips and decided to put her down. While at the loot test lab and the bank, I got another 2 infusions, both going into assaults, and began the second fight with the siren. Not gonna lie, this fight was a little bit more rougher because using the strategy before, I would lay into her with the hand cannon ammo that I had. However, what makes this worse is that the light in the bank is so dim, and the fact that she's a ghost and transparent, I couldn't see her half the time. But unlike last time, I pulled through first time go. Didn't even get close to dying, not even once. After making a deposit at the bank and returning to the gate of Comstock's house, I was not doing too hot on box pistol ammo, unfortunately. After unloading what I had left with the hand cannon, all I can do was pick off the siren from a distance, with all that I had left in the box pistol. What also didn't help was that the fact that she summoned a grenadier, which would just spam me from a distance. It ate through my shield very quickly, and then I had to spend a lot of time in cover because I did not want to be greedy. I hope that by killing some of the other lesser grunts first would hopefully trigger Elizabeth to give me more ammo, but all she did was give me more salts. Thanks. After enough chipping at the siren, she went down through the gate seething, and we were off to Comstock's house with no other glaring issues. After Big Bird snatched Elizabeth, I was now off again to the Cuckoo's Nest, but this time, instead of dressing up as gothic KKK members, the place was filled with Benjamin Franklin enthusiasts. Channeling my COD zombie skills with training the Franks, I took the elevator to the mental ward and began sneaking past all the Death Grip boys to the warden's office. Like Monument Island, Comstock's house is another nothing burger. Reuniting with Elizabeth again, she gives you a past letter to herself like Nancy Pelosi does. It's true, guys. She can open tears. How else would you explain her decisive stock market trading? Fighting through the security staff and releasing a tornado inside of a building, I free Elizabeth. But now she's girl bossing and wants to kill Comstocks thanks to you freeing her from her lobotomy. I then picked up the final infusion and put it into salts. Comstock's flagship, the Hand of the Prophet, is not a difficult level by any stretch of the imagination, as we are not dealing with the Vox so much and primarily Colombian forces, meaning more chances for ammo. Commandeering one of the barges, we fly back to the Hand of the Prophet to redock and kill Comstock. The fights there are not too difficult. In fact, the rocket troopers are more a threat to their own comrades than to me. Fun fact, you can shoot the rockets before they leave the barrel, knocking them off of their ship with their teammates. Once on the flagship, we make our way to the control panel to release the Patriot pods to clear the skyline. It was a very easy feat now that we're completely decked out. Clearing the first deck and the second of all the drop pods, we make our way to the third deck and defeat another handyman, who becomes a total trope with the use of the return to sender. However, while fighting him, I accidentally hit another soldier while falling off a skyline. I thought the siren fight, the last mission, and then doing that would put my run in the double digits for resets. Another reset later, and we're at Comstock's quarters. Now, as the calm, collective, patient person I am, I allow Elizabeth to have a nice, understanding moment with her would-be father. After Comstock died of COVID, we're now in the last act of the game. The defense mission with Songbird. This fight is all about using Songbird to take out the Zeppelins before they can send more drop pods. Now, you can use Songbird to take out any of the barges before the Zeppelins begin spawning in and dropping off their troops if you're quick enough. I prioritize killing Patriots, Rockets, and Grenadiers, and then any other standard troops looking to damage the big battery. After defending the main deck of what seems like a while, the Hand of the Prophet returns to Monument Island. I call in Songbird, destroying the siphon, and we are rewarded with a third dunk in the river, ending the challenge. I want to thank you for watching to the end, and I hope you enjoy this kind of run. The Bioshock series holds a very special place in my heart that I've always enjoyed. If you have any suggestions about another challenge run I can do, let me know in the comments. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and remember to smile. Thank you.
Okay, so the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.